if you chose to do this puzzle for activity 4, we're just going to go through and read over the instructions very quickly to make sure you understand what you're doing. So for questions 1 through 8, it says give the missing exponent or factor. So if you look carefully, what they've done is they've taken a standard number and they've written it in scientific notation. And there's some part missing. They've either left out the first part, our factor, or they've left out the exponent. And our job is to figure out what is missing, what's in the x. So in this case, I know I need to practice putting this into scientific notation. That's my strategy each time. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to put my decimal behind. Remember, we read left to right, so behind means on the right-hand side. Behind the first number I came to that was not a 0. And I'm going to count how many times I had to move. 1, 2, 3. I even write it right underneath it as part of my strategy. So now I look. So if I was to put this in scientific notation, it would be 3.8. Ooh, they already did that part for me. Times 10. It's always times 10. And my exponent would be a positive 3. Remember, if it had been a small number, it would be a negative, but this is definitely positive. So the way I use these answers over here to help me is I find, well, my answer for number 1 was 3, so let me look at all my letters. S is letter 3, so I'm just going to write the letter S right here beside it. So I would do the same thing for the next one. I would turn this into scientific notation to see what my exponent is. Number 5, we'll do this one together very quickly. Once again, we're turning it into scientific notation. So I read left to right. I put my decimal behind the first number that is not a 0. And then I count 1, 2, remember skip the comma, 3, 4. So let's look at what part. So, ooh, this time I need the factor. Well, what would be those numbers in the front part of my scientific notation? It would be the 6.3 part. They've already done my 10 to the positive 4. So 6.3, so I look over here on my answer choices. 6.3 was the letter A, so next to the 5 I would write an A. So then when I go down to the next section, I have to take each of these numbers and put them in scientific notation. So once again, I read left to right. The first number I come to that's not a 0 is a 4, so behind the 4, I put my decimal, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. So when I go to write this in scientific notation, it'll be 4.7 times 10. And this was a big number, so it'll be a positive 4. Once again, they have my answer choices over here, so I'm going to look and see. 4.7 times 10 to the 4th. Oh, and right away I find it at letter V, so I would write a V right there. So that's what you're going to do for this section. Now the last section, you kind of do the opposite. We're taking it out of scientific notation and writing it out in the long way. So let's see. So I start by writing my 9.8, and then I look to see, ooh, it's a positive 5. Think of our number line. If 0 is in the middle, positives to the right, negatives are to the left. So since it's a positive 5, that means I'm moving to the right 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my new decimal's at the end. It's no longer there. It's at the end. And I fill in inside of each circle with a 0. So now look, I have 9, 8 with 4 zeros. So I'm going to go over here and find my 9, 8. Oh, there's a 9, 8, but not enough zeros. A 9, 8. Oh, only 3 zeros. Oh, a 9, 8, and 4 zeros. And that is the letter G. So over here, next to 18, I would write the letter G. And that's what you're going to do for each one of these. You may always use scratch paper if needed.